Hey everyone, and welcome back to another thrilling tale. Today, we're diving into a story that's going to make your jaw drop. Imagine this: a group of friends, united by a love for Halloween, transform an annual party into an epic, over-the-top spectacle. But this year, things take a dark and unexpected turn. We're talking about costumes, competition, and a whole lot of crazy. Prepare to be shocked, intrigued, and maybe even a little disturbed as we unravel the secrets behind this year's Halloween extravaganza. Trust me, you won't want to miss this. The life I dreamed of. Chapter 1. Things were getting crazy. There were 3 of us, married couples who had been throwing Halloween parties for several years. It all started when 7 years ago, we scheduled a party on the same day as the Thomases. We weren't close friends, but we had a lot of mutual acquaintances, and after some discussion, they agreed to attend our party, cancelling their own. We put them on the guest list, and the following year, it was their turn. By the next Halloween, the spouses were in high demand, and Wendy, the original mediator, wanted to throw a Halloween party. Of course, Dale and Erica Thomas did their best, and Wendy and Victor upped the ante again. We all had our own businesses, and the party was tax deductible, so the expense wasn't a big deal. Each year the parties became more extravagant, the decorations more elaborate, and the costumes, well, another case of one-upmanship. For the first 4 years, the parties continued to grow, and at their peak, about 30 couples were invited, as well as a few singles. For the 5th year, Vic and Wendy cut the guest list by a good quarter, and last year we cut it even further. The parties became more and more exclusive. Very few new couples were added, fewer and fewer singles, and the event became a local legend. The costumes got nicer year after year, and women joked that they no longer worried about getting ready for swimsuit season. It was the Halloween season that brought them to personal trainers. Last year, we raised the bar again by creating our first themed party, the Pirate Party. Since the very first year, we have awarded prizes for the best costumes by closed voting. At the Pirate Party, we awarded first through 3rd place for the best pirate woman, genuine silver reels in silver necklaces for the best costume and most original, and gold jewelry for the best costume overall. As you can imagine, some of the outfits were simply incredible. One girl showed up to the competition in an amazing costume that didn't have much to offer in terms of costume, but she only managed to place 3rd. Wendy took 1st place that year, wearing a gorgeous traditional night butterfly outfit, made mostly of sheer material. She wore her award necklace regularly, and every time I saw it, I remembered that outfit. It was just crazy. The whole party cost us about $3,000, with almost a third of that amount going to prizes. We had a whole graveyard out front, with humorous tombstones, of which there are now about 30. We hired day laborers to dig up the lawn, create the cemetery, and replace it the following Monday. The main decorations were a ship's mast in the center of our 2-story family room and ship railing along the back wall. The party was a blast, but we knew that no matter how high you set the bar, someone is bound to try to set it even higher. When we received our invitation for this year, we realized that the gauntlet had already been thrown down. The slave auction in Dallas is by invitation only. The owner of this house is invited to a slave auction in Dallas. You must bring at least 1 slave to be auctioned off to the highest bidder of the evening. All slaves will be freed at the end of the evening, and the best slave will be rewarded. Devices for controlling and training slaves will be provided, but you are encouraged to bring your own. Respond to the invitation with any questions. By arrangement, all invitations were sent out in September to give invitees plenty of time to prepare. Last year, we got caught up for giving only 5 weeks' notice. It turned out that some people had been planning their costumes for months, and our theme contributed. This time, we had about 6 weeks. I immediately wondered what a slave was. A costume is one thing, but control and training devices and auctioning off women seems to be another. Will our friends go for it? Or will it be the smallest party in history? I managed to corner Dale and ask him about the party. He wouldn't say a damn thing about what the plan was. He finally admitted that he didn't even know all the details, and that his wife Erica and her cousin Michelle were in charge. He complained that it looked like the party would be twice as expensive as the last one. I finally decided to ask him how things were going with the reviews. I shouldn't have been surprised. Within a week, they had a nearly 100% response to the invitations. 15 invitations, 13 accepted, one still trying to work it out. There was no fear or hesitation in this crowd. And it was good. Life seemed to be back on some sort of track. Halloween parties were the highlight of the entire year, and they usually resulted in a pretty hot evening, which, unfortunately for me, was becoming more and more rare. How does this happen? I married an amazing woman, absolutely gorgeous, the envy of all my friends. And now, 10 years later, I was ready to pose with her for one of those demotivational posters. Reality. No matter how good she looks, someone, somewhere, is tired of her crap. My feelings for her had all but dried up. She was the most boring woman I'd ever been with on our evenings, and even the slightest suggestion of another evening was met with hostility and usually a few weeks' interruption. Truth be told, she rarely refused to help me, but it seemed like such a chore for her. And it probably was. When we first started dating, it was God's greatest gift to me. It was unbelievable that I could be with this stone fox. Not much has changed over the years. Very quickly, after about 5 minutes, when we were just starting our lovely evening, I would just pass out and we would talk about the kids. Why? How? What can I do? As time went on, I became less likely to initiate and try anything. When guys chided me for going home to a hottie like that, I just laughed and agreed. How to tell someone that your dream girl isn't the same anymore. Only on Halloween did she open up a bit, and I could usually count on something more. I loved Halloween. My dear wife Amanda had been in constant discussion with Wendy for almost 4 weeks, but they never came up with a costume. This was unusual for these two, especially for Wendy, who was one of those artsy stay-at-home moms. She was always making homemade cards, invitations, and gifts, and was quite talented at it. Her artistic inclinations usually manifested themselves in original costumes. When I got home, I caught them discussing the topic in the evening and sat with them for a few minutes. Wendy seemed to have come up with an idea for their costumes, and when I was curious, she laughingly pulled out a folded piece of paper and showed it to me. It showed a model with several pieces of faux fur thrown over her chest and hips. Something like that, she giggled. It has always amazed me how these women can dress so conservatively all year and then one night a year just go crazy. Not that I'm complaining. I looked up at her and surveyed her body with a smile. Looks competitive. Yes, we thought a departure from the expected might work, and a captive cavewoman slave seems like a winning option. I could play a scared, uncomprehending captive woman caught up in a future society. It could be pretty wild. Wendy was always a favorite of the pageant. She was very attractive, and I'm sure I wasn't the only husband who fantasized about her every year. She was tall, only a couple inches shorter than me, and usually wore 3-inch heels with her costume, towering over all the other women. If that wasn't enough, her long legs were flawless. Her outfits were always designed to emphasize her best qualities. So, have you sorted out ours yet? I asked my wife. In her 34 years, she still possessed a stunning body. If Wendy could be found on the cover of Vogue, Amanda was more likely to grace the center of Playboy. She was an amazing natural beauty. If we ever threw a Baywatch-themed party, Wendy could pass for Alexandra Paul, and Amanda would look like Erica Eleniak. Think Under Siege, not Celebrity Fitness Club. She asked me for ideas, and I dug up an old gore novel for her to read. I had become familiar with John Norman's gore novels back in college. My fraternity library had almost the entire series. It was a world where warriors were at the top of the social ladder, where women were natural-born slaves, and technology didn't work. It was a predominantly agricultural world, with constant battles, dangerous beasts, and flying maunts. Slave women were of both lower and higher class. Some were bought for a few coppers, others sat next to the highest chieftains. On Gore, all women are gorgeous, and it is customary for the most beautiful women of Earth to be kidnapped and taken to this barbaric planet, where they are considered among the most suitable for slavery. The script is average to poor, and the scenes are not graphic, but it is a good read for a young adult. She took great offense to this, asking me if this is how I feel about women. With a laugh, I explained that it was the most ritualized and best described fantasy slave culture I knew of. I also reminded her that as far as costumes were concerned, Horace had the most options for incredibly beautiful outfits. I didn't bother to mention the fact that he was the most outspoken in his outfits. Face it, it's just another sick male fantasy where women let their true slave out and collapse in a heap at the mere touch of a real man. It objectifies women as if they're just mindless, uncontrollable bodies. It's not just another sick male fantasy, I objected. For a lot of people, it's the own male fantasy. Maybe it's your fantasy, pig, she replied, slapping me. I reached for her. You'd be my fantasy. She seemed almost shocked by this statement. Liar. We all know your fantasies live in your laptop. I shook my head and turned away. You were my first fantasy. You're still my biggest fantasy now. I closed the door behind me. A few days later, as we were watching TV, she asked me again. She was learning and was deeply curious. I told her that's how men usually fantasize about women, whether they admit it or not. I was surprised when she asked if I had any more books in the series. So I gave her the first one and then went to the used bookstores for more. It's so cruel, she remarked a few days later. Yes, many men still dream of living in a culture where force decides everything, to compete with other men for spoils of war, I admitted. Power is directed against women as well. It's so feminine. I would say the opposite. Such action on women is usually disciplinary, not action for its own sake. Discipline is intended to allow a woman to reveal her true self. The worst they describe is far less cruel than the actual atrocities in slavery over the last few centuries. So it's okay to tie women up to drag them by their hair, she asked. What do you think? In these stories, who wins in the end? Which woman doesn't become happy with a man? Men are tortured, starved, beaten, teased, humiliated. It's a cruel, barbaric, fictional world. In the end, as a rule, the slave girls defeat the master in the end. This is stupid, she announced, ending the conversation. And yet the night I took the initiative, she responded positively. There's a little bit of this scene I had to cut because of YouTube, but I'll remind you that a free trial of all stories for 7 days is available from us at Patreon. Afterward, she lay in my arms, and I looked at the beauty and wondered how I could give her up. I thought she was almost asleep when I heard her mutter, "Grow a beard." Unfortunately, that night was an aberration from the norm. Now, 2 weeks later, we're back on the subject again, this time with her friend Wendy to make it more interesting. I haven't quite figured it out yet, but I'm getting close to it. There's a whole culture online about gore. Someone just showed me The Second Life of Gore. It's hard to believe he has so many followers. But I will admit, there are a lot of good ideas out there on how to dress and play the role of a slave, she admitted. Wendy added, I have to say it seems pretty weird. The books are weird as it is, and here I see all these women online agreeing with it. I mean, I've heard of submissives and all that, but this is really weird. I read that over 3/4 of the players in SL Gore are women, averaging around 30 years old with 2 kids. Almost half play as slaves. There are about 11,000 female characters and 6,500 male characters in the game. They have over 600 trading stalls for players, and only a few exclusively for men. It's so weird, said Amanda. Wendy laughed. I never realized so many women read that series. I wouldn't be surprised if many of them didn't, I said. Tell him about David, Wendy said to Amanda, nudging her. Amanda nodded and continued. I just found out that Kim and David might be changing their relationship. Alice said she's going to dress him up as a Roman slave fighter, a kind of Spartacus, and she's going to be a rich patrician owner. How does that sound? She asked with a twinkle in her eye. It might be funny, but I think most women wouldn't pass up a chance to dress as wild as this one, so not many women will be bidding. And I know I'm not going to buy it, Wendy added. You won't have to buy just him. It looks like there will be a few more slaves than masters. The invitation allows the master to bring more than one slave. I know Alyssa will bring her sister. And, of course, Erica's cousin, Michelle. Now that Terry and Bill are separated, she is looking for another mate, rather than trying to find someone else to go with her as a slave. We thought about taking her with us, but Vic was too interested. Wow. I don't know a man who wouldn't want Terry as a slave. She's been coming to these parties since the very first one. Why she and Bob ever broke up is a real mystery. Damn it. What was I thinking? I was thinking about doing the same thing, or worse. Everyone would think I was crazy. I smiled at Amanda. Are you interested in being the first slave to have your own servant working under you? I don't think you'd want to be a slave to a slave." "What a pig you are," growled Amanda. "Is that what you want? One slave girl isn't enough. You want a harem?" I was surprised by her response. "Hey, I just want to help you. You can be an evening slave, and she can be a house slave. Maybe I can sell you both as a package deal to some poor, unsuspecting fool," I teased. Seeing that I was annoying her even more, I backed off. "Who are we kidding anyway? You know I'm leaving this in your hands. After all, you'll only be a slave as long as you want to be one yourself." I didn't realize how much it could be. When the party was 2 days away, I came home to a locked door with the alarm on. We never set the alarm during the day. "Is that you, Jack?" I heard my wife's voice hurriedly turn off the alarm. "Who else?" said I, a little annoyed by this procedure. I put my briefcase down and headed to the bedroom to change. I entered the hall, and I was confronted with an astonishing sight. Amanda stood, dressed in the simplest of costumes, a crude poncho. The sides were open, and a rope belt held the skimpy material tightly in place. From the front, it looked almost respectable. From the side, however, there was a leather collar around her neck. It was all she was wearing. It was the image from the cover of Gore's novel. She would have made Boris Vallejo proud. When I stepped forward and turned the corner, I saw something I couldn't see at first. Terry Griffith was standing next to my wife, wearing only a loincloth and a scrap of silk. The loincloth of white material dangled from a silver chain. She sat leaning on her heels. Her back was very straight, her head lowered. Her long black hair hung loosely over her shoulders. The collar around her neck was attached to the leash my wife was holding. I was at a loss for words, but my wife was not. "Nada!" she shouted. Terry instantly went into motion. It was Gorian custom for a slave to assume the position, and Terry responded perfectly to it. I stood still, stunned. The outfits matched them perfectly. My wife was the more attractive of the two, and the coarse fabric only seemed to emphasize her curves. Terry was slender. "Does this girl please her master?" my wife said quietly. "Jesus, that's fucking amazing," I finally managed to say. "Belly," she hissed. Terry lunged forward onto her stomach, assuming the position they had well, or maybe not well rehearsed. "Stupid slave," Amanda growled, rising up and pulling Terry's hands to her. She then slapped Terry lightly. Apparently it was part of the scene. "Ooh, please, mistress," Terry whimpered. Amanda stood up and walked over to me. "Command her, master." "Nadu," I said, hardly recognizing my own voice. Terry was obedient and knew immediately what to do. "Does master wish to continue?" my wife asked softly. My heart nearly burst. "Oh my God, you were so right," Terry sighed. "We will definitely win," Amanda said, raising her hand in greeting. "You two are evil," I said. My wife teased me. "Dance for him, Terry." Terry only shook her head, carefully going through her outfit. "That's why there are whips on the mountain," I growled. "Yeah, we should get you one for your costume." "A brave man," Amanda laughed. "A warrior who punishes his slaves," I corrected. Their laughter sounded in my ears as I walked back to my closet to change quietly. That night I got hit again, and still my bitchy wife snuck into my fantasies. At lunchtime, I went to the gym again. I guess in some ways, I was as vain as women are. Knowing that I was going to be wearing something as slavish as a barbarian's outfit, I had been working out hard at the gym and dieting for the past few weeks. Just 10 pounds. That's all I wanted. Luckily, my beard was past the itchy stage. I did 40 minutes on the treadmill and then moved to the elliptical machine for a warm-up. As I started my workout, I looked over and was surprised to see Terry sweating beside me. She was plugged into her player, oblivious to the world around her. I walked over and patted her on the shoulder. She turned to me, unplugged the earpiece, and smiled broadly. "Hey, beautiful. What brings you here?" It was strange to find her here, 10 miles from our neighborhood. Couldn't make it in the morning like I usually do, but I didn't want to miss my last chance to work out. She slowed her pace a little and wiped the sweat from her face with a towel. "I mean here," I explained, gesturing around us. There were plenty of gyms in our neighborhood that were closer. This one was right next to my office. After Bill left, we gave up our gym membership to save money. My sister signed me up for her membership for $10 a month. I'm saving $10 a week, not counting gas. We sat for a while before I broke the silence again. Terry, could I ask what happened between you and Bill? I never knew anything was wrong, and then one day I found out he moved out. She seemed to hesitate a moment. Same old story. Boredom, complacency, taking everything for granted. Too much mommy, not enough wife. I was still a little surprised, but I probably shouldn't have been. We hadn't had a single evening together in over 6 months. Sure enough, he left with a bang, suddenly became adventurous and lovey-dovey for one wild weekend. And then, he was gone. I didn't expect that, but it seems like half the couples are in a similar position. I know what you mean. I looked at the little beauty and wondered where we'd all gone wrong. What's going to happen to us, Terry? Don't say we, Jack. You still have something, she said tensely. Your wife still loves you. Don't bet on it. If she does love, she shows it in a weird way, I told her. I bet you got your piece last night. You were both like two devils, hotter than hell, she laughed. I'll take that bet, I muttered. She looked like she was shocked. You didn't even try? She finally asked. Tried to, but shot down. Oh, Jack, I'm sorry, she said, and it sounded sincere. God, if you two can't do it, who can? I just shook the pedals a little. Don't mind me, I'm just a little cranky today. I'm sure we'll work it out. Please don't say anything to Amanda. Of course not, Jack. A few minutes later, she was just finishing up. She stopped, then reached out and placed her hand on my arm. It was nice talking to you. Thank you for sharing, and please don't give up. I smiled at her. Thank you, Terry. Trust me, I'll do my best. Especially this time of year. It's the only time I'm sure I'll get at least a couple of clappers. Amanda loves Halloween. Aren't we all? She said, looking away. She looked pretty damn good. Thursday night, the night before the big party, it was all anyone in our circle of friends was talking about. Coming home from work, I heard the entry alarm beep again, but this time it was much less annoyed. My wife came out to meet me in her outfit, and I noticed a few new details. Neat rips in the material, extra hooks and loops on the sides to hold it tighter to her body. She was also wearing a few simple beads. The length seemed a little longer. Apparently she had unraveled the hem. I want you to try on your suit in case we have to adjust it, she told me after I gave her a cursory kiss at the door. A light peck on the cheek. She took me into the bedroom and helped me pick out an outfit. It was very simple, genuine leather, tight around the waist, with rough trim around the bottom that came a couple inches to my knees. She insisted I wear it without wearing anything underneath, like a kilt. The outfit came with fur-lined leggings and leather sandals. A thick leather belt ran diagonally across my body and held the sword at my side. To top it all off, I wore a headband that looked like Conan's outfit. Amanda pulled out a leather tool bag and attached it to my side, opposite the sword. Finally, she pulled out a large, garish necklace with a heavy chain that she put on my head. Not bad, she remarked, making small adjustments to the circumference of my waist and noting the places where it encircled me. She began to move around me, noting the length of my waist to make adjustments. Can you put the skirt and straps in the smokehouse? Darken them and make them a little more authentic. It would be nice to smell the battle smoke. Sure. Do I want to know how much it's going to cost me? I asked, adjusting my waist to keep it from getting too tight. Don't be a baby. It's a bargain. Turns out you can buy a whole deer hide for less than $200. We've rented more expensive outfits in the past. You should know that slave outfits cost next to nothing. You should care about how much you spend tomorrow at the auction. I looked in the mirror. I wasn't a big guy, but I kept myself in shape. I thought I didn't look too bad. Sometimes, sweating through the 40th minute of a run, I wondered who I was doing it for. It didn't seem like Amanda appreciated it. Try on the wig, Amanda said, handing me a clump of hair. After a little work, I had a barbarian wig with long braids in the front. I felt like Heidi. Forget the wig. What do you think, Terry? Asked Amanda, peering over my shoulder. Surprised, I turn around and see Terry standing in the doorway. She was wearing the same outfit as the day before, only the top had been altered. Everything was perfect and so damn attractive. Masterful, she decided. She smiled at me, then said sharply, "Nadu, slave." Amanda quickly assumed the slave position. Terry walked over to her, and I saw that she now had something in her hand. She tapped my wife's back, encouraging her to sit up higher. As she walked around my wife, I saw 2 distinct scars on Terry, on her back between her shoulders, as well as several other distinct marks. A couple of them looked like they might be bruised. Satisfied with my wife's position, Terry walked over to me, put the thing in my hands, then stepped back and stood next to my wife. "Do your slave girls give your eyes pleasure, master?" asked Terry. "Their beauty gives me pleasure, but their teasing doesn't," I told her, assuming the role I was wearing. "Yes, master. That's why your wife is no longer the first slave," Terry said, holding out her hands to her. "Did I say you could break the position?" I barked at her, and her eyes went wide. She quickly assumed her previous position. "Belly," I barked, and she assumed the appropriate position. I walked over to my wife and walked around her. I could see that she, too, had already experienced the effects of the thing. 2 reddened welts, the same as Terry's, and a few triangular marks on her body. "I see you both have already tried this thing in action because of the wounds on your skin. Speak honestly, slave. Did it hurt you very much?" "Terrible, master. It still stings and hurts even now, an hour later." I walked a few steps into the bathroom and came back with aloe lotion. I put some in my hand and gently rubbed it into her back. "This ointment will help, sweetheart, but remember the pain. Imagine how much worse it would be if it were delivered with the full force of a man." I turned to my wife, who was still standing in her seat, watching me help my friend. She looked a little shocked. "Tell me, Kajira, did you like it?" I asked, moving around her. "No, master," she admitted through clenched teeth. "You wear the clothes of a slave collar surrounds your neck, you occupy the position of a slave, and yet I feel that you do not consider yourself a slave," I told her, running my hand through her hair. I stepped back to the brunette. "This one knows her place. Doesn't she, sweet?" "Yes, sir." "Who are you?" "La Kajira, master. I am a slave." I noticed another change in outfit and continued our skit. She said, "Thank you, master." "Yes." "Kajira." I turned to my wife, the blonde slave girl. She wouldn't let the role take her. "You stood before me as a slave." "Willingly. You are sitting here, but you are restraining yourself. So I ask you, do you really want to be my slave?" Her eyes looked at me with challenge. Then she lowered them and whispered, "Hell yeah." I held out my hand and said, "Answer correctly." The brunette pleaded with her companion, "Please, master, don't touch her, she's yours, really." I reached down and grabbed the unruly one by the hair. "What's it going to be?" "I am your slave, master. La Kajira," she whispered, but her eyes still argued. "Interesting. Perhaps I should just kick you out. Let you find another master who will protect you, clothe you, provide for you. You're hardly worth the trouble, Jack." She whispered, "Be silent, slave girl. Do you really think I won't do anything to you if you deserve it?" She shook her head. I kissed her. When I pulled away, she looked at me in surprise. I pulled back and walked over to my partner. I nudged her with my foot. "Bara," the command for submission. She took this position so I could tie her up. Such a sweet little slave girl. So sweet, so obedient. I loosened the back bandage. "Nevertheless, I enjoy admiring your beauty." I went back to my wife and stood in front of her. "Surprise me," I told her. She looked at her friend, who was still facing us. Then she looked up at me with a look I couldn't understand. It was part anger, part submission. Do I need to repeat myself? "No, sir. This girl is obedient," she said, following my orders. To my immense regret, a huge portion of this text here I also had to cut down due to YouTube. So once again, I will remind you about the free trial of all stories, including this one, on our Patreon. I wrapped the fabric around my waist and headed for the bedroom exit. I was hungry. I wondered if I should call the slaves to serve me, but I smiled when I saw dinner ready on the stove. I'll let them rest. I heard footsteps. Terry was standing next to me, wearing a robe. "Amanda said to take them off before you make a mess, and don't forget to smoke the leather." She pulled a bottle of water from the refrigerator and turned to head back to the bedroom. After hesitating, she leaned toward me and whispered, "Buy me tomorrow. Buy me, and I'll be yours, completely, in every way." Then she kissed me lightly on the cheek and walked away, giggling mischievously. That night after Terry left, Amanda and I had a talk. A real talk, in a way we'd never talked before. We opened up and discussed our wants and needs in a way that I had always avoided. A few tears were shed and we both got defensive, but it was still an amazing breakthrough. It was beautiful to look at. It was the most amazing night in 10 years of marriage. It's a shame Halloween only comes around once a year. A continuation of a story that got a little confused in the plot, but I think you'll catch the gist of it, my dear viewers. My wife was furious. In her current state of disbuttle, this description can be taken both figuratively and literally. She snatched the artificially aged parchment from her friend's hands and read the slave auction rules one more time, out loud for all to see. Dallas slave auction on Halloween. 1. All presenters must arrive with at least one wingman. 2. Only one master per invitation. Companions will be sold. 3. All slaves must be wearing collars at all times. 4. Masters receive 500 gold per slave for evening expenses. 5. Additional gold can be earned, contests, etc. 6. Slaves will be auctioned off at random. 7. No master may auction off a slave he brought in. 8. Slaves who have removed their collars will be released immediately. 9. Nothing bad may be demanded of slaves. We stood on the porch with a few other couples deciding if we still wanted to play this game. The slave auction Halloween party was already overdone as it was, but this new twist required almost every woman to be a slave to someone other than her husband. Add to that the artificial and uncertain ways in which the masters obtain wealth, and there's no telling where things might end up. It also made the bag of silver coins at my side pointless. An hour at the local numismatic store was wasted. "Can you believe this shit? Who would agree to these rules?" asked Amanda to her friend. She wasn't the only one who questioned the setup. We had already lost one couple that I knew of, and it was obvious that the creativity of our hosts had not gone to waste. The rules didn't seem so monstrous to me. In fact, if anything, they didn't seem strict enough when it came to the slave defense. But forbidding a master from buying back his slave was untenable, at least for Amanda. The hostess and her cousin Michelle, looking stunning, were intent on getting my wife to give up and join the fray. "Come on, Amanda, that's only fair. Otherwise, for the sake of decency, every husband would have to buy a wife or look like a complete moron. Now they're free to mix things up as they secretly want, at least for a while," Erica objected. She was right. In her outfit, I'm sure I wasn't alone in wondering what she would look like. Amanda didn't relent. How do they want it? What about us? Who would want to be run by some stranger? This elicited a laugh from Terry, our third wheel. "Almost all the women are here except you and me, apparently." Amanda looked shocked, as if her friend had turned on her. "You don't agree with that, do you?" "Hell no. I know who I want to belong to, and he brought me here. But I see where they're going with this. If Bill was still around, I'd still want to be controlled by your hubby," Terry said. "Nice girl. If she keeps this up, she's gonna make me blush. But that's not going to happen now. Do you really want to risk someone like Cole? Or, God forbid, Greg controlling you?" "Hell, Greg brought 2 slaves. He'll have plenty of gold to bargain with," Amanda objected. Michelle was still working with Erica, trying to convince the girls. "I don't think he has much chance of adding to his wealth. Besides, even if he wins, if you don't like it, all you have to do is say no and take off the collar." She put her arm around Amanda and led her away from the gathered crowd. "Don't worry," was the last thing I heard. Even though I was nominally the master of my incredibly gorgeous wife and her almost equally delightful girlfriend, I had no desire to interfere. Our shaky marriage was barely on the mend, and I didn't want to cause trouble. The status of our new open relationship with Terry was equally shaky. Truth be told, I would have been happy to take my slaves home and play with them alone. I looked around at them. Terry came over and put her arm around me. "Shall I pet your slave, master?" I laughed and pulled her to me, stroking her long, luxurious dark hair, which had gotten a white streak in it overnight, like Anna Paquin's character in Rogue. It was just as much to her face. I couldn't help but notice the indecision of the other couples. "Looks like Amanda's not the only one having problems here," I said. "The others are just waiting to see what we're going to do. If we get in, most of them will go. If not, half the party will go. Erica knows that," she said confidently. "That's why she's so insistent on her own." "What makes you say that?" she laughed. "Everyone knows Amanda is the strictest around here. If she agrees, it should be fine. The men are just as interested in the outcome because they know that if we don't go, the two best slave girls will no longer be part of the festivities," she teased, as she performed a little slave dance for me by Horace. I noticed that it caught the attention of many passers-by. Maybe she was right. Mean girl. I looked around the porch, considering all the waiting couples. Many of them were still wrapped up in cloaks or coats, hiding their costumes from view. I was definitely curious. There were several women among those present that I wouldn't mind possessing, and I had no doubt that just about every man here would kill to possess my stunning wife, let alone the vixen next to me. Tal, Jack. I turned and saw Troy Brown waving at me. It looked like we weren't the only ones who'd come as Goreans. Troy's outfit was more Robin Hood than Gorean warrior, but his slender wife wore an open tunic of red silk that reached her knees. Her tunic covered much more than Amanda's barbaric tunic. There was more to cover, of course, but the curves suited her well. "Tal, Troy," I replied in a friendly manner. I gave Kayla an appraising look. "Red silks definitely suit you," I teased. "Whose idea was that?" "Her own," Troy laughed, "but she sure earned it." We laughed, and she blushed sweetly. On Gore, in red silk, identified slave girls trained in a special art. They were an odd couple. She was taller than him, and probably outweighed him by 20 pounds or so. Not that she was that heavy, it was just that he wasn't that big. Maybe 5'6", 140 pounds. He was in good shape and looked good in his outfit. Her soft curves contrasted nicely with his lean muscles. He moved closer, lowering his voice. "That thing about not being able to buy back your own slaves isn't very good." "No," I agreed. "At least not for us." He nodded decisively. "I thought the men of Horus should band together. We could pool our wealth and buy slaves from each other and then share them. Kayla is a little wary of being sold to the wrong guy." His offer intrigued me. I knew there was more than face value behind it. He might have offered to trade them rather than share them. Like many of the other men present, he clearly had a thing for Amanda. But unlike most, we saw them often, if not frequently. His wife was friendly and sweet and easy to get along with. He was likable and decent, and they had a good marriage. At least as far as the rest of the world was concerned. Recent events have made me wonder how good someone's marriage is behind closed doors. What's more, it could work. It would solve a lot of problems. And the exchange part of the deal could be kept under control. Being able to buy out his wife was a nice bonus. I wondered how far the sharing could go. As if I needed extra encouragement, Kayla stood up in the classic Naru stance facing Gore. "Buy me, master, please. By Kayla." I grinned. She had that look and that attitude. I felt Terry tug on my arm. "I can't imagine such a thing," she said with a smile. "I'm sure Amanda would agree. We like Troy." I held out my hand, and Troy shook it. "That's the plan, as long as Amanda decides to stay." Terry chuckled. "Don't worry about her. It's all for show. There's no way she's going to the party after all we've done to prepare. She just needs to be calmed down a bit." My sweet Terry was right. Amanda walked toward us, and Kayla stood up, making room for her. My wife walked over to me, hooking her arm in mine. "You'll look after me, won't you, Jack? I'm a little nervous." I put my arm around her. "Troy and I will keep an eye on you. We'll work together to ransom you and keep you out of the clutches of those other posers." That seemed to cheer her up, and she looked at Troy, who was waiting patiently. "Really? You'd do that for me, Troy?" A rueful puppy dog look. Unfair. Besides, it's completely unnecessary. He's willing to walk through fire for her. "Of course, Amanda. Anything I can do to help. You know that." She sighed heavily. She capitulated. Good, then let's do it. Before she could turn away, I grabbed her hand. Once we cross the threshold and I put the collar on you, you belong to me until the auction. Agreed? She looked at me with a big innocent look. Amanda is Kajira. She will do nothing to disappoint her master. Amanda will be good, very good for master. Damn, that made me so uncomfortable. Our decision broke through the logjam, and we entered the house, with half a dozen couples following at our heels. At the door, I stopped the girls. I reached into one of the pouches at my side and pulled out a leather collar. It was simple, no studs or patterns, just a single metal loop in the front. It's for you, Amanda. She lifted her hair and let me put the collar around her neck. It really suits you, I said, and kissed her on the lips, which took her by surprise. We didn't usually demonstrate this publicly. Hell, who am I kidding? We hadn't been demonstrative in private until the last week. When I pulled away, she blushed. Pretty Kajira. I think I'll call you Mandy. I tugged lightly on her collar ring. Thank you, master, she said quietly. I turned to dear Terry and pulled a second collar out of my bag. It was a silver mesh collar, almost an inch wide. It had a large loop in the front, perfect for a leash. And this one is for you, sweet Kajira. Do you like it? She stood up to her full height, moving her hair out of the way. This is beautiful, thank you, master. No prettier than you, I told her, closing the clasp on her back. Dale stood nearby and handed me 2 small bags of coins. 8 gold coins of 50, 4 of 20, and several small coins in each, sir. May I commend your taste in slaves? They look great. I didn't know the proper way to say to a male slave. Thank you. I hope your new mistress is to your liking tonight. We wandered around their house, soaking up all the changes. The house was filling up quickly. As we entered the large center room, I saw that a raised platform had been set up in front of the fireplace. There was a single 6x6 wooden pole, rising from the floor about 8 feet high, with 2 large steel rings attached to it. Silks and pillows were strewn everywhere. The remaining furniture had been moved out of place, leaving the space open. Walking through the dining room and formal living room, I saw the same thing. I wondered where all the furniture had gone. Numerous flags were scattered everywhere, but instead of flags, long silk cloths hung from each one. I wondered about their possible purpose. The lighting was subdued. Most of the overhead lamps were out, and the candles scattered throughout the house emitted a dim flickering light and strong scents. The corners of the rooms were particularly dark, and I suspected this was done on purpose to create an atmosphere of seclusion. The centers of the rooms were mostly empty, leaving room for standing and socializing. The house was warm, which is a good thing. As we explored the neighborhood, I saw several new girls dressed in leather mini-dresses. They were fastened with a large zipper in the front. Leather collars completed the outfits. The girls looked young, probably college students looking to make some easy money. They were all pretty, though not as stunning as some of the guests. A pair of male servants were present. Fortunately, they were both trim enough to pull off such an image. They were probably college students. I briefly estimated how much they would be paid for this night. Last time we threw a Halloween party, we hired 3 pirate girls as bartenders and servers. It cost me over $150 each. The whole thing seemed expensive. While the servant girls went around handing out drinks and snacks, the male servants mostly stood back and watched. Wow, what a roller coaster of emotions, right? From friendly competition to a full-blown, mind-boggling invitation. Can you believe this escalation? It's like watching a slow-motion train wreck, but with way more sequence and intrigue. We've seen how a seemingly harmless tradition morphed into something far more complex. The once friendly rivalry among friends has taken on a life of its own, blurring the lines between fantasy and reality. The costumes, once a playful expression of creativity, have transformed into something more sinister, a battleground for dominance and control. The introduction of the slave auction is a game changer, pushing the boundaries of acceptable behavior and challenging our understanding of power dynamics. It's a stark contrast to the initial spirit of fun and camaraderie. We're left with a myriad of questions. Will these friends maintain their bond amidst the escalating tensions? What dark desires lurk beneath the surface of their seemingly perfect lives? And what does the future hold for these characters as they step into this dangerous new world? The truth is, we're only scratching the surface. There's so much more to this story, and we can't wait to share it with you. If you're craving more twists, turns, and unexpected revelations, head over to our Patreon for the full, uncensored experience. Let's dive deeper into the minds of these characters, explore the psychological implications of their actions, and uncover the hidden truths that lie beneath the glamorous facade. We promise it's going to be wild. So, what do you think? Are you ready to embark on this twisted journey with us? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more thrilling tales. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring the darker side of human nature.